what connects all of these moments is not personality or ideology. It is in function, it is imperial function. Both these guys, all three of them represented a future for their country that could not be controlled by Western interests. And they stood at the intersection of sovereignty, resourcement, and non-alignment. They are all treated not as political actors to be negotiated with, but as problems to be removed. And this date, January 3rd, 2026, January 3rd, 2020, it marks the point where force stops pretending to be reactive and reveals itself as disciplinary.
The scenario is going to be unpredictable, but unlikely peaceful. That's what we've just heard there. But there's precedent for this, isn't there? I mean, every time regime change has happened in the Middle East, where we are, it's not gone well.
And this is why I am concerned when the US says this is the end of it and we're out now, but we've taken the president out of the country. That doesn't mean it's the end of the chaos in the country. They need to think of who will take over from him. And is it really about regime change, or is it about ideological change in Venezuela? Are they going to...
The thing about stuff like this is, like, empires don't just project power spatially. Like, they project it temporally. They choose moments that resonate backwards and forward. Moments that, you know, tell the story without having to announce it. And this date, January 3rd, is one of those moments because it says, we've done this before, we can do it again, and we will decide when it's remembered as justified. And when Soleimani was killed, it was not framed as an assassination. It was framed as a necessity, as prevention, as unfortunate but responsible in the name of national security and international law. These terms are mentioned briefly and then quickly discarded and replaced by lore. Escalation is acknowledged, but it's just normalized and we move on. And what matters is not the legality of these things, but the demonstration of it. And the point is to show that a senior state official could be eliminated openly without a declaration of war, without consequence, and without and with applause from the centers of power. And again, it's been seen before. Patrice Lumumba, 65 years ago this month, was removed. And it followed the exact same, a very similar logic. Even if the language is different, he was delegitimized first, cast as unstable, dangerous, incapable of governing. His insistence on sovereignty over resources was treated as reckless, and his refusal to be managed was framed as extremism. And by the time he disappeared, the crime that was committed, the narrative was already laid out for it. And what connects all of these moments is not personality or ideology. It is function. It is imperial function. Both these guys, all three of them, represented a future for their country that could not be controlled by Western interests. And they stood at the intersection of sovereignty, resourcement, and non-alignment. They are all treated not as political actors to be negotiated with, but as problems to be removed. And this date, January 3rd, 2026, January 3rd, 2020, it marks the point where force stops pretending to be reactive and reveals itself as disciplinary. It is when the empire reminds the world that dialogue is conditional, sovereignty is provisional, and survival is negotiable at best. And this is not chaos. This is, it's the imperial order trying to enforce in its last dying breath, trying to reinforce its legitimacy. And so when you look at what's happening now, the headlines or the clips that are going to circulate online about this operation, you got to start with a pattern that goes back 65 years. Start with the memory of that. Start with the acknowledgement that these acts they're never isolated. They're never accidental. They're never without precedent. And again, this date, January 3rd, is not about what just happened. It is about what is being signaled. And that signal here is very simple. This is how resistance is dealt with then and now. And yeah, just a treacherous development. Man, what a way to start the year.
It was bound to happen. Perhaps for many people, it's not the most ideal or correct way. The peaceful route is best, but unfortunately, the regime we have there in Venezuela said many times that they would not give up peacefully, that they would rather die than relinquish the power. The United States always warned that there could be an intervention that could help us. The time has come and we must celebrate, because they are helping us to escape from all this tyranny.
See, like, it's just a myth. Like,
There
the
seems
tyranny
to be
is
a
a
bit
myth.
of a
And it's
disconnect
literally the
between
exact same thing.
Venezuelans living.
It's the same thing that I was saying about a second. It comes from the same prototype, the same playbook as the Patrice Lumumba playbook, literally to the T. It first comes with delegitimization, dehumanization, framing somebody as being unstable, too emotional, too radical, saying that they're reckless. And this distinction matters because recklessness implies irresponsibility, not principle. It turns principled resistance into immaturity. And then after that, the next process is isolation. Allies are pursued, support becomes evaporated, and the same people who had just recognized your independence suddenly discover concerns with your leadership. It's concerns about order, concerns about stability, concerns about whether you can govern. Then comes the removal. And it's not through war, but through bureaucracy, through arrest in the middle of the night, through temporary measures, through the quiet language of management. And Patrice Lumumba was detained, transferred, handed off, and everybody involved could later say that they didn't technically pull the trigger, but by the time he was executed, the decision had already been made elsewhere. And that's the part that people get wrong, is because Patrice Lumumba wasn't killed because of something he did in a moment of crisis. He was killed because he offered an example. He was killed because of what he represented. He represented a possibility that a post-colonial country could actually gain its sovereignty, that it could control its own resources, that it could say no to Western capital and survive. And that was unacceptable. And that's what they did to him. And this is what they're doing to Maduro today. And so Lumumba was neutralized, not as a threat, but as a precedent that needed to be snuffed out. And that's the key line, is because he wasn't executed for what he did. He was executed for what he made possible. And once you understand that, a lot of history snaps into focus pretty quickly, because the message that's sent by Patrice Lumumba's assassination wasn't just to the Congo. It wasn't just to the global south. It was to the world. And it sent every newly independent country watching and said, hey, you can have independence, but only the cosmetic version. You can raise your flag, you can sing your anthem, but the moment you try to control your own wealth, you become a problem. And this is how problems get handled. And this is why Patrice Lumumba matters in this moment, and why I'm going to keep bringing it up throughout the entire time I'm streaming here, because not because it's some tragic, resemblance, right? Because it is. But it's also because it worked. The Congo didn't become sovereign. It became fragmented, exploited, and permanently unstable, to the point where we're still seeing it being completely destroyed today because of the consequences of those actions. Western access to resource continued. Responsibility for what had been done was diffused. Nobody ever went to jail. And, from the Western Empire point of view, the operation was a riveting success. That's the part that people don't like to say out loud, is that Patrice Lumumba's the original post-colonial execution, because it's established the playbook. A legitimate leader, resource sovereignty, non-alignment, slow delegitimization, slow dehumanization, legal removal, and then a quiet killing in the cold of night. And the regret and the clarity all comes later, but no accountability, just accountability brushed off in the wind. And those sequences, those playbooks, those prototypes, they don't disappear, they just evolve. And, bullets get replaced with sanctions and much more. It doesn't always have to be incentives and things like that. They find new ways for carrots and sticks over time. Bullets get replaced with other modes of operation, and handoffs, such as the one that Lumumba had, get replaced with criminal indictments like what Maduro is going to face now. But the logic stays the same, which is why it's not just history, because it is 65 years this month, but it's a template. Yeah, I can't say it enough, but there's so much on that thread right here. It's just wild and unprecedented.